The Baylor Bears were searching for a quarterback in the portal in this offseason, obviously, while we saw some good strides from Sawyer Robertson the end of last year. I think they all felt that they needed to go out and at least get some competition, but really looking for a starting quarterback. They ended up with Daquan Finn, the MAC Player of the Year in 2023, get him out of Toledo, a guy who I was really high on coming out of the portal, and didn't have a great first few games with Baylor. Also got hurt in that Utah game, and we still don't even know if he's been like cleared to play. And there's been a bunch of kind of wonder around Baylor Nation, speculation on how much a guy like Daquan Finn is getting paid in NIL. Because we've heard the going rates for quarterbacks these days in the transfer portal are astronomical. Matt Rule, former Baylor coach, last year was saying it takes over $1 million to get a real top-end starting quarterback to your program through the transfer portal. So Daquan Finn's probably not making $1 million, probably making some decent coin for people like you and me and those who are still in college. Is probably getting a pretty good paycheck to come here and be the Bears starting quarterback, at least to start the season. But apparently that was not the number one option for this Baylor staff that knew they were going to need to go out and get somebody. They swung for the fences. According to my friend of the show and Inside the 12 host, Pete Sousa, this is what he had to say on the Pete Sousa Show about who Baylor went after in this offseason.
I heard a rumor, hang on to your seat here, that Will Howard was offered $4 million from Baylor and turned it down. And I heard that from a pretty good source.
Whoa. Will Howard, arguably the best quarterback out there in the transfer portal. Every list you saw, Gabriel Howard, just which way you wanted to go. And obviously he had some very good years at Kansas State, but to hear that Baylor was throwing that kind of money out there is shocking. And by the way, I talked with Pete about this. He wants it to be clear that this was not a source from within the walls at Baylor, but one that is very familiar with this situation, and one that I would absolutely trust as well as Pete did running with it. Not a Baylor source, but that number seems to be pretty accurate from this source that he heard it from. And boy, golly, whoa. Baylor, $4 million. This is a program that wasn't dishing out anything in NIL like 2 years ago. They didn't want anything to be transactional. And now you're out here telling me that they went out and ponied up $4 million. No, that's Alabama money. That's Michigan money, Ohio State money, Oregon, Nebraska, that kind of money. That's not Baylor money. Most times, no, it's not. But honestly, you got to think about the context here. This is a handsomely paid head coach and one that the athletic director has hitched his wagon to, and they know that it's desperate times and therefore desperate measures. Baylor can raise money, and at that point, $4 million still seems like a lot, but I wouldn't be surprised if they ponied up a couple $1 million from some benefactors, some friends of the program, to arrange an NIL deal for Will Howard. And obviously, he's getting buku bucks at Ohio State. The only real reported NIL deal we've seen from Ohio State is just a little over $1 million, which is what Quinn Ewers got in his 1 year on campus there. So we know there's the numbers in the millions, but for Will Howard to be turning down a roughly $4 million deal, what does that say about college football? What does that say about the player? More importantly, most importantly on this podcast, what does it say about Baylor? Because the Bears and Dave Aranda have seen Will Howard just carve them apart the last few years. In fact, the last 2 games, both blowout wins, both 4-score wins by Kansas State. He threw 6 touchdowns and no picks in those 2 games. He barely needed to put his foot on the gas pedal to crush Baylor the last 2 years. So while that number still seems huge for a school like Baylor, does the mentality surprise you? That they would pony up as much cash as possible to go and get a guy who's carved them up at the most important position on the football field for a coaching staff that has really not fully gotten quarterback right since they've got in the door? That is a bombshell dropped by Pete Sousa. And he told me he was doing it in research for Inside the 12. He was talking to one of his sources about it, and then this story comes up. And I'm sure that will be featured on Inside the 12 in the coming days here. Find that on YouTube. Him and Madison Hawk do that show. But my goodness me, $4 million for Will Howard. If that's true, there's obviously good and bad to it. The bad is that Will Howard looked at the situation and said, "No, I'm good. I'm good. $4 million to come and play there. I'm all right. I'll go hear what Ohio State has to say, or whatever, Michigan, USC, hear what they have to say." But on the other hand, that if that's of course 100% true, I think there's something of a positive to take from a Baylor fan to say at least they're out there and, putting out big dollar figures to try and get someone in to help save this program. Of course, it's disheartening that the second option is probably an eighth of that price tag. But man, what a bombshell that is. And obviously, Will Howard he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I mean, he's once again doing it at Ohio State. He's having a big year there. I know they're just coming off a loss in which he had a bad play to end the game. But he's been rolling for Ohio State, a team that's been in the top 5. He's thrown 14 touchdowns to just 3 picks this year. He's already thrown for 1,500 yards in the halfway point of the season. At least there's good ambition there by Baylor, but that sounds like a desperate move for a desperate program. And if they land him, it's the best move they've ever made, probably. I mean, at least in the NIL era, the short-lived NIL era, that would be the best move that they would have made. But when it falls short and a kid turned you down at a $4 million paycheck, that is really tough. But clearly there was ambition there to turn this program around at the quarterback position, because that's what Baylor's needed the last few years. They've had plenty of other problems. Don't get me wrong. This does not exclude the problems of the offensive line, of the defensive line the last few years, their lack of forcing turnovers, the way the coverage has been in the last couple of weeks, their inability to establish the run. There's all kinds of issues for this program over the 2023 and now 2024 seasons. But if you look at Dave Aranda's tenure, there has been a problem at quarterback and getting the right guy under center. So to hear that Baylor went after Will Howard, I'm going to look at it from the positive standpoint, but the realist in me tells me that was almost never going to happen, even at $4 million or $3 million or maybe even $2 million. Other bigger programs than Baylor were offering $2 million. But wow, Dave Aranda really, really wanted to put it all out there and complete this team in year 5 with his job on the line. He knew it. Mac Rhodes knew it. Everyone knew it. Everyone knew this was a hot seat year for Dave Aranda. So having the ambition to go out and get Will Howard would have been one of the great moves in the history of the Baylor football program. I really think so. Having a quarterback of that ilk, a quarterback that elite, changes everything. And Baylor missed out on it. But $4 million, it makes you wonder what's going to happen for the future of this program. And if they can pony up that kind of money again, how much they try to downplay this pursuit, it becomes all the more fascinating when looking at the next offseason. But man, what could have been for this Baylor football program if they had brought in Will Howard for this hot seat year for Dave Aranda.